Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into the history of one of the world's most powerful naval forces, the United States Navy. It's a story filled with pirates, presidents, and a whole lot of political drama. So, let's set the scene. It's 1775, and the American Revolutionary War is just kicking off. The colonists are facing the mightiest naval power on the planet, the British Royal Navy. The British ships are blockading ports, seizing supplies, and generally making life impossible for the Continental Army. It quickly became clear that fighting a war without a navy was like trying to win a sword fight with a butter knife. On October 13, 1775, a date now celebrated as the Navy's birthday, the Second Continental Congress took a monumental step. They authorized the purchase and outfitting of 2 armed vessels. Their mission: to intercept British supply ships heading to their troops in the colonies. This tiny fleet was the humble beginning of what was then called the Continental Navy. The first ships were not sleek warships, but converted merchant vessels. One of the very first was the USS Alfred. Its captain, a man named Dudley Saltonstall, was tasked with leading a small squadron on their inaugural mission. Another key figure from this early period was John Paul Jones, a fiery Scotsman who would become one of America's first naval heroes. His famous cry, "I have not yet begun to fight," during a brutal battle against the British ship Serapis, perfectly captured the defiant spirit of this fledgling navy. Throughout the Revolution, the Continental Navy, despite being massively outgunned and outnumbered, played a crucial role. They raided British commerce, captured vital supplies, and forced the Royal Navy to divert resources to protect their shipping lanes. While they didn't win any massive fleet-on-fleet battles, their guerrilla tactics at sea were a constant thorn in Britain's side and provided a huge morale boost for the American cause. But here's a twist you might not expect. After the Treaty of Paris ended the war in 1783, what do you think happened to the Continental Navy? It was completely disbanded. The new nation, wary of a strong standing military and deep in debt, sold off the last remaining ship, the USS Alliance. In 1785, for nearly a decade, the United States had no navy at all. This decision quickly proved to be a mistake. Without a navy to protect its merchant ships, American vessels became easy targets. In the Mediterranean, they fell prey to the Barbary pirates, who operated out of North African states like Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli. These pirates would capture American sailors and hold them for a hefty ransom. For years, the U.S. government paid tribute, essentially protection money, to these states to ensure safe passage for its ships. It was humiliating and expensive. The situation was getting out of hand. President George Washington, in his addresses to Congress, repeatedly urged for the creation of a standing navy. He argued that if the nation wanted to be respected and to trade freely on the world's oceans, it needed the strength to defend itself. The final straw came in 1793, when Algiers declared war on the United States and captured 11 more American merchant ships. The public was outraged. The debate in Congress was fierce. Some, like Thomas Jefferson, were still hesitant, fearing the cost and the potential for the Navy to drag the country into foreign conflicts. But others, like Alexander Hamilton and John Adams, were staunch supporters, arguing that to be respected, the nation must be respectable. Finally, on March 27, 1794, Congress passed the Naval Act. This act authorized the construction of 6 powerful warships, or frigates. These weren't just any ships. They were designed to be the superwarships of their day. They were bigger, faster, and more heavily armed than any comparable frigate in the European navies. The design of these ships was genius. They were the brainchild of a brilliant shipwright named Joshua Humphreys. He designed them to be powerful enough to defeat any frigate they might encounter. but also fast enough to escape from a more powerful ship of the line, which were the battleships of the era. The 6 original frigates were the USS United States, USS Constellation, USS Constitution, USS Chesapeake, USS Congress, and USS President. Building them was a massive national undertaking. Shipyards were established in 6 different cities along the East Coast, from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, down to Norfolk, Virginia. It was a project that galvanized the young nation. One of these ships, the USS Constitution, would go on to become the most famous ship in American history. Launched in 1797, its hull was made from incredibly dense and resilient live oak, which proved to be so tough that British cannonballs would supposedly bounce right off it, earning it the legendary nickname Old Ironsides. With these new ships, the US was finally ready to project power. The first major test for the newly re-established Navy came in the late 1790s during an undeclared conflict with France known as the Quasar War. French ships had been preying on American merchant vessels, and the new US Navy was sent to the Caribbean to protect American interests. In a series of ship-to-ship duels, the American frigates, particularly the USS Constellation, proved their worth, capturing several French warships, and demonstrating that the US was no longer a pushover. But the defining moment for the young Navy came shortly after, in the First Barbary War. President Thomas Jefferson, who had once been skeptical of a navy, had had enough of paying tribute to the pirates. In 1801, he sent a squadron of American warships to the Mediterranean to deal with the threat once and for all. This conflict was filled with daring exploits. One of the most famous was led by Lieutenant Stephen Decatur. After the frigate USS Philadelphia ran aground and was captured by Tripoli, Decatur led a small team of volunteers in a captured vessel, snuck into the heavily fortified Tripoli harbor at night, and set the Philadelphia ablaze, denying the enemy a powerful warship. British Admiral Horatio Nelson himself called it the most bold and daring act of the age. The war culminated in the Battle of Derna, where a small force of U.S. Marines and mercenaries marched across the desert to capture the city, a victory immortalized in the Marines' hymn with the line "To the shores of Tripoli." The success in the Barbary Wars was a huge victory for the United States. It ended the humiliating practice of paying tribute, established American naval power on an international stage, and created a generation of battle-hardened officers and sailors. From these early struggles, the U.S. Navy was forged. It was born out of necessity during the Revolution, disbanded in peace, and then reborn to fight pirates and defend the nation's honor. The lessons learned and the traditions established in these formative years of courage, innovation, and resilience laid the groundwork for the global force it would become. The story doesn't end here, of course. But this crucial period established the principle that for the United States to be a sovereign and prosperous nation, it must have a navy ready to defend its interests on the high seas. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this history interesting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into fascinating historical topics. Let me know in the comments what other parts of naval history you'd like to see covered. See you next time.